So today I'll be talking a little bit about what was missed in that video last week where only a piece of it got uploaded, and also the other video where I will not include the drumming practice, but I will do a little bit of like the hitting practice. We'll be drumming on the body, and I'll be using the words that I reference. So first of all, I had been cut off in that video, which was 1 minute and 35 seconds, about where Abraham went further on his test than he could on his own, which means God carried him a portion of it. So there's this idea that the moon is always waxing and waning. It has phases, but even when it's always full, but even when we only see a part of it, it's always full. So darkest before dawn means that it shines solely at night, right? It takes sunlight and shears the sunlight when there is no light to light the way. And it's like this idea of like convex, concave. As it's growing one way, it's growing the other way. We could see the dark by the light. Like whatever's fully lit, the other portion is not lit. So they have a relationship, and then it goes to the other side, right? The other side is getting lit and the other side is dark. So we see the darkness amount and the light amount are like entangled in a way. So it's a good metaphor for like when in the Tehillim, it says, in the Psalms, it says, God is my shadow. We can understand in some way also, usually God is the sun, and God is, the creator of the sun and the moon, but like even as the moon, when we can't see, this idea that, and recently, in last month, the Jewish calendar, the lunar month, and lunar again, has to do with Tu B'Av. It's like a Jewish holiday where it's about relationship and single people becoming involved with each other and entangled. And people would wear white, and there's lots of customs that come from the two Talmuds, one the Bavel Talmud and one Yerushalmi Talmud, the Exile Talmud and the Geula Redemption Talmud. And Talmud is like the learnings of the customs, and also how to look at the world and how to choose life in various situations where there's a lot of like interpretations and identifications and justifications that have to happen. But you might say, oh, that's very left brain, but it's actually for the sake of truth and love, for not truth like hard facts, but like the truth of oneness and in connection, the essence and the core, like to thine own self be true. It's an adapting, constantly being brought into expression. It's like the somatic system, the body consciousness. We don't own the body. We bring in what's of the self, and from a higher place, we're like interpreting, and we're almost like, it reminds us of like external garments. So it's like, look at the colors I'm wearing, is what someone said to me yesterday. Like, so, and just for like, historical sake, I'll say that after Tu B'Av, all the wood was collected for the year. One of the tribes, where there was some issues, was accepted back again. All the tribes were allowed to intermarry, and there was the deaths of the 40 years after the rebellion stopped. And so this is the idea of like all this and know this or that, right? This truth of oneness. So they would wear white, and also there's this idea of like, and this class, I was talking about what Akiva Tat said, and also I'm talking here about from Rabbi Kamen, from Chav Avos Yisrael, some of his Hasidus classes, a lot of this material is from there. So from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, this is the Chabad lineage, the wisdom, the knowledge, and the understanding. So there is a cerebral element here to being able to integrate and also live like a calm aliveness, but also sparked up for what's good. So, the idea is not to like abstain from everything and to also be in partnership. So in approaching your partner, like, because that was what the holiday was all about, it's like, whether you're in Bavel, which is like Babylonian, right? Babel, or Yerushalayim, which means like inheritance, where you're belonging, where you belong, what belongs to you. You have to see what's being offered, if it provides what's missing, see what I can offer, what, has to bring out the best in me too, and then seek someone who values what I'm offering and appreciate what's being given that fulfills me. And then, of course, also there's these like other teachers I've had on the way, like even in the Lubavitch Rebbe's, there's the Alter Rebbe who wrote the Tanya, and in some of these Hasidus classes I mentioned, Chabad and Hasidus is like to bring it into action as a kindness, as an overflower, as a generator, as a provider. So there was a woman I met, and she helped me a lot. And there's this idea of Yachid, which is a kind of unity. And then there's this idea of Echad, which is like one. So Yichud means alone. It's one of the levels of the soul where it's all one, right? This idea of the essential truth, the core essence of it's all connected. Versus echad means one. So there's this differentiation between one means there could be two, right? But all one alone means there isn't any other. So there's this singular, undivided, no dimensionality or division. But with a lot of these holy teachers, they would have time to spend where you would enter a state of yechidus, where you would go into unity. You would feel the oneness of your soul with all life, with all being, with all divinity as you connected with them. And so that's like this, that's this idea of yichud. And Havaya is like Yud-He, Vav-He, Tetragrammaton, is that source oneness, versus Eloheinu, which is like our highest power, is admitting all that we have a higher power, right? Or our truest source, right? Like the most one source where we all could come from, the most contributive of all derivatives, is the diversity from source. They both come something from nothing. So, to have God be like the lover, the beloved, and to see our suffering as our own benefit, right? Like we're passing our tests, and to facilitate the return to love and not to numb our feelings or the darkness, push us to go to light and also to get brighter. We have to like sometimes just come into the breath. And the last letter of it's in the Tetragrammaton twice, the letter He. Such a subtle letter. It corresponds, as the Tetragrammaton, each letter corresponds to a spiritual world. It corresponds to the world of, it's the lightest, most breathly letter. It corresponds to the world like from creation and action. So it's like there's a higher level and a lower level of lightness, of being, right? There's a higher level of being, which is like there is an other just to have an other. And then there's a lower level of being where it's like I want from the other. I want the other to give me. So there's these traces in the ground, dirt. The beginning of the differentiation is the human being. And God creates life with this breath. So it's like we have these traces of our dirt from the earth built into us, and breath, and we have this ability to dwell. Earth is a dwelling, and also your breath is your dwelling. When you're breathing calmness, you're in calmness. And so this is like Shochein is divine presence, dwelling is Shechina, which is to rest, right? And even there was a prophet, Zerubbabel, he said a lamplighter is going to be as a seed planted in Babylon. And Zechariah said there's one in each generation. So if we're lamplighters, we're being the light, and sometimes we forget the light of our soul. We forget that one light. To get back to God, all I want is you, is to say, you are me. I am of you. And versus what I think might be better. God is the place of all places, the space of spaces. It's about getting out of time and location as how to be with the presence. And, there's many ways to serve, and each of these layers, like I mentioned, chesed, to be in serving, it said it's like wine kind of love. And then gevura, like the left arm, is like truth, is like love like fire. And then tiferet is like the truth of the Torah, what's permitted, what's forbidden. They call this thing pilpul in erudition of going back and forth with the scholars, where someone will find the inside out of your story, and then you find the inside out of theirs, and then inside out, and you present both sides of like everything. And so, you're balanced in the middle of everything. And then there's Netzach, which is prevailing. It's a strong force of going forward. And then, turning away from something bad and going towards good. And then there's like admission of ignorance and limits, which is Hod in the left leg. Rising up to be a master with restraint is the groin area, Yesod, the foundation. And then we lower ourselves to be open, to serve anyone is Malchut. So that's being the dirt. We're here to be the shelter also. We're here to be sheltered and be the shelter. So these subtle like energies, we could even think of the word number 7 in Judaism. We have an aspect where there's chariots. Like to be a chariot is to be a chariot for that subtle energy. There's like 7, corresponds to the 7, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, the 3 patriarchs, Moses and Aaron, the siblings who redeemed the Jews from Egypt and guided them in the desert, and then Yosef, one of the tribes, the son, who helped them during the famine, but also him and David have the Messiah come from them. And there's Messiah ben Joseph, Messiah ben David. Maybe I'll talk more about that another time. David is the King David, right, from Jerusalem. So spiritual source to physical matter, like I said, something from nothing, from a all one into a one. These patterns of 7, right, is like 7 heavens even. It requires a state change, which is like water has to become to ice or steam. it has to expand or contract. And for example, incense took them to this cloud of glory. The word keter, which I didn't refer to before, keter, like this hovering crown. There's kesher, which is bond. So ketoris was like this idea of incense that took them to this bonded to that subtle, which can't really touch. But when you don't have like a dwelling place or a high priest who could do it, it can't be a sacrifice ritual offering. It just has to be because it makes life more pleasant. Because we can't use it to bond to that which is above if there is no above. We're not really grounded in aboveness. So echad now, 1, corresponds to aleph, which is 1, ches, which is 8, 7 heavens and earth, and daled, which is 4 directions. That gives us the dimensionality, right? Yichad, which means just alone, is the one where I mentioned we sometimes would meet with someone holy in order to feel that oneness. So I met with this woman, her name was Bella Wasserman, and she's a random lady who I met in the street, and she helped me a lot with some of these concepts by telling me, God's with you, you work hard, you have gifts you don't even know about yet. You're going to learn things when it comes to kids, spirit, your heart, doing a lot with a little. She said, teach on the internet or in person. You've got projects to do. Don't get married yet. You're welcome to have a seat in the important places, to be a teacher, to teach even the letters, the codes. She told me about some spiritual guides I have. She mentioned on her own. She said Moses, Aaron, David, Ruth, the Ruth and Boaz. They got married for a day, and a friend of mine told me that he was very rich. They had a son together, and then he died. Yosef, Shlomo, Esther. He married. So if they had a son, maybe they say he died right after they conceived together. She tells me, heal your community, the people. That's your mission. God is your father for that. She told me a very important number for me is 13, which is like my year. I was becoming 31. Now I'm 31, and it flipped. She said, don't go to cemeteries, wear less jewelry. She gave me her views. And so that is what I'm glad that I could. I hope I'm not saying anything that I said in another video, but I wanted to share these concepts, which are all very important, and I hope that they prove to be helpful. And now I'm going to continue on to something that I didn't do, a different video that I had put up, which didn't upload. And this is where we're going to practice together, just first releasing a lot of all the dark. So we're going to consider ourselves now in the practice as a chariot. I want you to imagine you're a chariot, and I'm going to get the chariot card. This is the chariot card, just for if you're interested. It corresponds to the letter and number 8 in Hebrew, Ches, and the sign of Cancer. And I happen to speak about some concepts which do relate to Cancer, like the moon, right, and relationship and bonding. So that was interesting. But I will now, just in order to catch up with this practice, we're going to release now as a chariot. We have all carried things that are in the chariot, and it's baggage, and we're going to make it lighter by just letting it go. I'm going to read it through. We're going to do it together, okay? Each time I say a word, I'm going to imagine something just dripping away. I'm going to get heavier in the seat, heavier in the shoulders. The face is going to relax. This is going to be a relaxing. I've been carrying this. It's not mine, okay? These energies exist. They're not mine. They're not yours. Let's take a few deep breaths. Secrets, shame, discontent, anger, jealousy, manipulation, possessiveness, hypocrisy, selfishness, pride, craving approval, intolerance, taking it personally, punishing, grief, stinginess, vengeance, judgmentalism, exaggeration, rejecting, worthlessness, self-sabotage, gossip, impatience, desiring honor, cowardice, laziness, superiority, sexual misconduct, degrading, narcissism, greed, pettiness, hopelessness, overcompensating, victimizing, stealing, controlling, inflicting pain, instant gratification, disempowering, personality, under-restricting, fear of contamination, superiority complex, uncompromising, stubbornness, harshness, exploiting, entitlement, taking for granted, fear of silence, shallow, clinginess, prejudice, resentment, attachment, lying, not keeping my word, rage, rigidity, disappointment, territorialism, people-pleasing, cheating, comparing, negating, over-aggressiveness, bombarding, self-limiting, blaming, feigning, cynicism, misfortune, oversharing, vanity, intimidation, threats, denial, soapboxing, claiming overloss, griping, condemning, regret, nitpicking, tattletaling, proving, unworkability, perfectionism, parasite, arrogance, depriving, dictating, overbearing, neglect, interrupting, projection, paranoia, caretaking, fixing, pushiness, competitive, distraction, make-believe, bitterness, enemies, poison, stagnancy, ignoring, dividing, helplessness, crises, abuse, danger, hesitation, avoidance, limitation, constriction. And now we're going to tap around the body. Tap on the legs. Tap on the arms. Opposite side of the body. Tapping on opposite leg, opposite arm. On the outside of the thighs, behind the legs. Shoulders under. Other side of the chest, middle of the chest. Head. Heart. Okay. Believe it or not, that's like drumming. We actually ground the energy. And now we're going to be a chariot filling up. Now every time I say something here, I want you to imagine a drip coming into your vessel. It's a see-through drip, like we said, the letter hey, very subtle, like breath. Like it just has the other. There's just a place to land. There's just something else. And then as it gets more concretized, it becomes like an object. Like it becomes a paper. It becomes a thing. So before it becomes a thing now, we're just letting it drip into being. Okay, it doesn't have to be a thing yet. We're receiving these cultivations that we would want to get from the physical world before they become, objected, becoming object. Okay, just dripping in love, positive energy, blossoming, blessing, abundance, light, acceptance, faith, providence, grace, fortitude, serenity, direction, power, innocence, creativity, spaciousness, balance, intuition, trust, belonging, admiration, joy, playfulness, communion, purity, mercy, sweetness, commitment, enjoyment, peace, cherishing, presence, calm, bliss, forgiveness, surrender, beauty, safety, resilience, prudence, adaptability, sustainability, devotion, humility, warmth, mystery, dignity, sanctification, compromise, harmony, radiance, resourcefulness, openness, praise, flow, fulfillment, discernment, equanimity.